Imagine sitting at a live poker table and knowing exactly who's bluffing, who's strong, and who's just pretending. Sounds like a superpower, right? Well, today I'm talking to one of the world's top live tell experts who has coached players from all over the world with combined poker winnings of over $10 million. And he's about to reveal 5 game-changing tells that could take your game to the next level. These are the subtle signs most players miss, but not you. From reading body language to catching hidden patterns in chip movement, this is insider knowledge you don't want to miss. If you are playing live low-stakes poker, there is even better news for you. And if you stick around to the end, you'll find out what the chin has to do with all these tells. It is something I wasn't aware of myself. Let's start with one of the most interesting tells. This one can save you a lot of money because it typically only occurs in really big pots when a player goes all in. Have a look at this guy. The guy pushes his chips into the middle with 2 hands. What does that mean? Let's ask Karim Celli, the Austrian poker mindset and performance coach who has specialized in tells for the past 5 years.
So basically the theory is like this, right? If you have something strong, you feel more confident. And if you feel more confident, you grab the chips with both hands and you slide them in. A lot of times they slide in really nearly into the middle of the table because they're so confident. So obviously I'm only that confident if I have a strong hand. If I have a bluff, I will not grab the chips with both hands and slide them in, right?
Celli says that this tell often splits opinions, and that's why it's crucial to observe how confident a player is when he takes this action. And one more thing, it's important not to confuse this one with our next tell, which is throwing chips into the middle when betting. This doesn't happen very often, but some players will do it even without counting out the chips. It's like they're throwing coins into a wishing well, and the wish is that you fold. While announcing an all-in by pushing the chips forward with both hands is a sign of strength, not the same can be said about the throwing chips into the middle one.
Normally when you have a strong hand, you're more careful, you're more thoughtful. So you place the chips in slowly and carefully and thoughtful. But if you just, if let's see if I can win the hand like this, right? And you throw it in, that's more weak on the weaker side. But again, that's very specific.
So don't fall blindly for this one, but understand that it is very different to the confidence conveyed when someone pushes their chips into the middle. The next tell is one that has been talked about a lot, but most players make a mistake even when they spot it. It is the one where you observe that your opponent quickly glances at their chips as soon as they see the flop. Here, Daniel Negreanu explains how he spotted this tell on Alexandra Botes when they played against each other.
The brain doesn't realize they're doing it.
Yeah.
You look at the flop, and if you don't see anything you like, you keep staring, right? But subconsciously, when you see something you like, the next thing you're going to do is bet chips. So your eyes quickly glance over there.
But there is a twist here, as Karim Celli explains.
The most important thing is that you ask yourself, who was the aggressor pre-flop? Because if he's the aggressor, then he probably will c-bet, and therefore the tell itself isn't that strong. But especially if the person is out of position or not the aggressor, then you want to be very careful, because then chances are high that he might lead out or re-raise you.
So the most important thing for you to do when you are the pre-flop aggressor yourself is to watch out for this tell on your opponent. So far, we have talked about tells where opponents did something with one body part, like the eyes or the hands. These next two are about the body as a whole. And this next one might even be the easiest of all to spot. All you have to do is to observe if a player changes his body language from being chatty and uninterested to quiet and focused in a very short period of time.
The best example that I can give for this one specifically is when the waiter is around the table. And let's say the waiter is like, oh, so who wants to drink? And let's say you're in the hand and you're like, oh yeah, I take this drink. And then you look at your hand, you're like this, and the waiter is like, oh, you want this drink? And he's like not giving any answers anymore.
That's a prime example of someone holding a strong hand. They were chatting away, and as soon as they see that they have a big hand, their demeanor changes completely and they became laser focused.
The best poker players that I know of, those players, they can still be chatty when they have a good hand. That's something that I've definitely saw. I wouldn't consider this as a reverse tell. I think that's just more experience, because if you play a lot of live poker and you see pocket aces, you can still be chatty and fun. But especially people who don't have so much experience, you really see this like shock moment of like, wow, here's a good hand, and now I'm quiet.
So when you see a player showing this kind of behavior, don't get brave with your Jack-10 suited, just fold it like a napkin. And here's the exact opposite of this tell. When a player looks at his cards and then starts waving at someone across the room or ordering a drink. This is usually someone who has given up on the hand. This can be super useful, especially in tournaments, because now you know you can raise a bit lighter if one player who would act behind you is most likely going to fold.
But the general rule is if someone is interested, it's usually a sign of strength. And if someone is de-interested or not interested at all, it's a sign of weakness. True, but again, we always have exceptions. A prime example that I can name here is I've reviewed once the stream, and there was a very young poker player. And a lot of times if you see someone very young on the poker table, he's experienced. He played a lot of online hours and hands, so he knows what he's doing. And this guy, I think strategy-wise, played really well in terms of bet sizes and which hands he raised and free bet and so on. But his big problem was that you could literally see when he has a hand and when he didn't have a hand. Because when he didn't have a hand, he was like looking at the roof, looking around, you know, like you can really see he's like already like mentally thinking about something else. And if I see this, of course, I'm just betting and he's folding, because I think you should develop a specific skill set.
You might now be asking,
But Andreas and Kareem, what about players who act strong when they're actually weak, or the other way around?
very good question. Let's defer to the expert.
Reverse tells 100%. But I can tell you from experience, from reviewing, I don't know how many hours of streams and playing myself for many, many hours, that people don't think like that. They're so occupied with stack sizes and how many chips they have and how many outs do I have and whatever, that they don't think about, okay, and now I do a reverse tell. I always say, if you can really convey this over multiple hours, giving away multiple reverse tells, then you deserve my chips, because it's a Hollywood actor who is like so focused on everything and then also doing reverse tells. Then he deserves an Oscar.
That's fair enough, but given these reverse tells, how confident is our expert actually in spotting the tells and drawing the right conclusions? Would he call a bet for $10,000 based on a tell?
That's an amazing question, actually, and I think a lot of people don't fully understand how we can use those things or those tells. So, first of all, a tell alone doesn't mean a lot. If I see one tell, of course, I'm not betting everything on it. It's just good to have this in the back of your mind. So you always want to look for a combination in tells. If I see 3-4 tells who all show a sign of weakness or a sign of strength, I'm more sure. And the best possible case is if I see multiple tells multiple times. Meaning I have, let's say, 3 different tells that convey weakness. He only does something when he's weak, and I've seen those 3 tells 3, 4, 5 times. Okay, then I'm calling with ace high, king high, whatever, and chances are high that I'm right.
But are these tells universal at all stakes or more common at certain levels?
I think it's easier to read people in general on the lower limits, but just because people are less experienced. Because obviously, if you have a Triton player, and I work with some Triton players, yeah, but if you have a Triton player, of course, if he gives away a tell, that can lose him sometimes hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars.
So that's really good news for you if you play 1-2 and 1-3 live. People's tells here are practically screaming for attention. But how do you even teach someone to spot tells, especially to someone like me who couldn't spot one if it came with a flashing neon sign and a marching band?
I have like 3 categories. So the first category is the complete basic fundamentals. Yeah. So what is a fundamental? What's your main position? How do you sit on the poker table? Because the most important thing is that you don't give away tells yourself. If you have the basics down, we talk about advanced level. Advanced level means we learn about specific tells. So again, what is a classical sign of weakness? What is a sign of strength? So it's like learning the pre-flop range. That's always the example that I give. Yeah, so you have different positions and you have different ranges, and you learn the same with tells. And then we have the mastery level, as I call it, and that's when we together review the stream of someone, or I also have recordings of myself where you see me play and you really see like what I do. Where do I look? When do I spot something? What do I think?
Okay, and now I am curious. What does the chin have to do with spotting tells? This is something I have never heard before, so Kareem Chelli, please enlighten us.
What I see every single week is that people don't fully look at each other. I'm not sure why, maybe it's a little bit uncomfortable, but what I always say is that your chin has to point towards your opponent. So if my opponent is on my right side, my chin has to move in this direction. A lot of people, they just look with the eyes, and the problem is that you don't see the full vision. If I just look with my eyes at my opponent and the chin is, for example, facing the flop, then I cannot see the shoulders, the arms, the fingers, and you miss a lot of little things.
So, start by moving your chin to your opponent and see if you can spot any of the 5 tells we talked about today. If you want to learn how to actually exploit players once you spot their weaknesses, then click on this video here.